Hello, my name is Susie and I am a local studies librarian for Derbyshire County Council, and I'm just going to give you a bit of an introduction and an overview of the Ancestry website. So Ancestry is one of our subscriptions that we have in libraries. It's very popular. A lot of people use it to access their family history and do research, and it's a great resource full of really useful information. Lots of resources are on here now where you would have previously had to have gone to individual record offices and archive holdings across the country, and they're all here ready for you to use. So it's a great time saver. It's not difficult to use this site, but it can be a bit overwhelming when you first go on and you look at the sort of the amount of results and the amount of records and databases and things that are on here. And it's just a case of learning the best way to navigate your way through the website and to find the right information that you're looking for. So it's free to use in all Derbyshire libraries and the Record Office. All you need to do is just be logging into a library PC, and then you'll find an icon on the desktop, or the website, which is ancestryinstitution.com. Will take you straight to it as well. So like I say, it's something you have to do in a library. It's not possible to do it from home, but it's free to use in any Derbyshire library. So when you go on and you click on the link and you open up, you'll find something that looks like this home page here. And there's this very tempting green button here that says begin searching. So you might think, oh, there we go. And I'll click on that. And what this will do is this will search the entire database. So you're looking at a global database here with an American bias. Ancestry are an American company. So if you start typing in something very simple, for example, John Smith, and you search for that, you'll see that you're going to get a vast number of resources. So you've got over 13 million different resources, and there's all sorts of things there. US World War I draft registrations, Pennsylvania naturalization records, things from Australian convict transportation registers, New York passenger and crew lists, all featuring the name John Smith. And a lot of people, if they do that, they'll just think, well, this doesn't make any sense to me. This doesn't relate to my relatives. So I don't know what to do with all that information. It's far too much stuff to wade through there. Thousands and thousands of pages I'd need to wade through. I'll just forget that and I'll come off it and never look at it again. So my big top tip, my big message, take-home message from using Ancestry is think about the information you want, think about the resource that will be useful, and the correct years or and dates that will apply to the information that you need, and search that way. Go into that database, find that resource. Make sure that you're looking at the right country, the right years, the right parts of the databases before you even go into putting a name in, or you think about putting a name in, because that way you get fewer results, you get more accurate results, and you don't feel like you're wading through tons and tons of information and resources that don't apply to you. So, what a lot of people want to know first off is what's actually available on Ancestry. So, they've broken down the sort of major, sort of most popular topic areas and put them under a menu under this search button. So if we click on that, you get a list here. You've got, first of all, you've got all categories, and that's very similar to the card catalogue option at the bottom. And that's essentially a way of viewing everything that's on there. So if I was to click on card catalogue, that would bring up basically everything that's on Ancestry, and then it would give you options upon the left here as a way of filtering down and refining the information you want. So you've got geographic location, you've got the type of item it is, whether it's a newspaper, probate, a map, birth, marriage and death records, and then you've also got years, for example. But within this menu, you've got some of the more popular areas of census and voter lists, birth, marriage and death, military, immigration and travel. So we'll take a look at the census records. So if we click on that, oops, Let's try again. That's better. So you're looking at just the census and voter list. So you've already started to narrow down the field, but you're going to want to go further and look at the UK census collections, which is here. And then once you're on this page, you can scroll down again and you've got the very specific bits of the census, the years, and also the areas of the UK that are covered. So you can see from the beginning of this list that the census, in any meaningful fashion for family research, began in 1841. There was some censuses taken before that, but they're purely numerical. So just population statistics. So they don't really assist us with any family research. So the census is taken every 10 years. And it's locked for 100 years because of data protection. So we can view the census for 1911, and then a couple of years time we will be able to look at the one for 1921. So at the minute, between 1841 and 1911 is the sort of the range that we are able to view at this moment in time. So we're just going to click on one for example. We'll just go to 1871 England census. And I'm just going to type in a name, John Smith. And we'll just see the type of information that you'll get. So we're just going to view this top record. And so you can see this information that's been typed up here from the original document of a John Smith, age 21. So his estimated birth year of 1850, the fact that he's a lodger, the area that he's living. And you can also see all the other people that are in the household with him. It's quite a lot there, quite a large number of people. So you can then also click on the original document here to view it. And using the little plus and minuses, you can zoom in and out of the document. If you scroll up, you can see the information along the top that's been recorded. So the road or street, the name of the person, their relationship to one another within the household, their age, occupation, and where they were born, and so forth. You will see some numbers here on the left. Unfortunately, these don't relate to street numbers. So you can't think, oh, that person must have lived at number 24 or 25. That's just the number of the household that the enumerator. So that was the 24th or the 25th household that's been filled in this lodger. So it's not a house number, unfortunately. The handwriting here, I must say, is very neat. Sometimes you can have a bit of an issue where the handwriting can be quite poor, and then it's very difficult for a transcriber to make sense of it, and that's potentially where you get issues with errors that have been made where something's been transcribed incorrectly. Somebody's perhaps spelt it slightly differently, or they've read a name or an occupation or a place name, and they've not quite noted it down correctly. So just bear that in mind when you perform searches. It's always worth thinking about how potentially a name might have been misheard or misspelt. So if you're looking at the name Laura, perhaps, and they can't find it, perhaps try Lauren. Try different spellings of names like Rebecca. Have different amounts of B's and C's. Rachel, some people spell it with an A, some people spell it without. If you had an Uncle Fred, might he have filled the form in as Fred or Frederick or Freddie? And if he has put Freddie, is it Freddie with a Y or Freddie with an IE? So be prepared to try different things, because I think the census is one of the records where there can be lots of errors and lots of mistakes. This has all been completed by one enumerator. So they've taken the forms of different households and filled them into one book. This has then been transcribed by an individual into Ancestry. So you can see how there's a sort of a potential chain there of potential errors or mistakes or little human errors that can possibly lead you to miss your relative or not find your relative or be able to locate them. And if that is something that you struggle with, always it's worth bearing in mind that you can always look for other people that are in the household as well, because I had this when I tried to find my grandfather. I couldn't find him because he had been transcribed as Olive and he was Oliver. But I managed to find him because I located his sister. And obviously, there he was on the line underneath in the same household. And I realised what had happened. There was a very poor R at the end of Oliver. It looked more like a flourish on the end of the E. And so somebody looking at that had just read, oh, his name's Olive. And transcribed it thus, and that's why I couldn't find it when I typed in Oliver. So I just want to show you as well how to sort of navigate on this page. So you've got your little zoom in and out here, the plus and minus. If you're in a library and you want to print this document, you've got your little tool symbol there. You click on that and there's your print option. What you can also do is to save a copy of the image. There's two things you can do. The first thing you can do is save to this computer, and if you do that, it brings it down into a little JPEG file here. You can open that up, and that's what you can save perhaps to a USB stick. But if you're in the library and you think, oh, I haven't got anything to save it to, what you can do is click on your save button and send image home. And then what you do is you put your email address in and it will send a copy of that document to your email. It's really useful because, like I say, you might just go in and have a quick look and then think, oh, actually, I really want a copy of this. So that's a great feature as well, that you can save that image and send it home to your email. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is the birth, marriage and death indexes. So the first thing to say is that you don't get the certificates on Ancestry. What you get is the index. If you want copies of the certificate, they need to be purchased from either the appropriate local registry office or from the general registry office. But what you do get is the index, the volume and the page number, which is the information you would need to give the record office the registry office to obtain a copy. So it is really useful for that, and you get the index as well, but they're not as exciting, unfortunately, to look at as the census records. So with birth, marriages and deaths, for example, we'll just click on that one. And you've got here some featured data collections, and for the purposes of today, we're looking at the England and Wales civil registration birth indexes. So a bit of background. Civil registration began, as you can see, 1837. Prior to that, there wasn't any civil registration, and you're looking purely at church records for the ceremonies that you associate with birth, marriage and death. So it wouldn't be a birth record, it would be a baptism or a christening ceremony if that had been recorded in the church records. A marriage ceremony, obviously that would be the correct date, but it would then be a burial ceremony as opposed to a death date. We do have some of the Derbyshire parish registers are on here, but obviously if your family aren't from Derbyshire, whether the parish registers are on Ancestry, that would vary depending on whereabouts those parish registers were located, and if those parish registers had an agreement with Ancestry to feature on there. Also, if your relatives were what they're classed as non-conformist, so Catholics, Methodists, Zionists, then their church records won't necessarily appear on Ancestry. Only the state religion, the Church of England, is obliged to lodge their records with a record office, and therefore they will probably or very possibly be on Ancestry. If it's anything that's non-conformist, those churches are not obliged to lodge their records at all. So the church may hold those records. So prior to 1837, it gets a lot more patchy. But from 1837, obviously, until the present day, all birth, marriage and deaths are required to be registered. So you've got the indexes here, and you'll see that they stop at 1915. The birth, marriage and death records are all split. So they run from 1837 to 1915, and then 1916 up until sort of the present day. I think it's about 2005 is the sort of the latest ones, but they are updating those all the time. So the easiest way, if you're thinking about the birth index, is you think, okay, I'll click on this 1837. But actually what I want is the other bit. Well, the best thing is to click on this bit here, because then it brings up a link to the second half of it there. So what we'll do is we'll just, again, just to demonstrate, we'll type in John Smith. So for the older birth indexes, we'll just pick one at random. What you essentially get for the person is their name. Here you've got his mother's maiden name, the year the birth was registered, and also the district. And then this volume and page number here is the information that you would need to give to the record office if you wanted a copy of his certificate. What you don't get with any of the records is the date. All you get is the quarter, so the bit of the year that the birth was registered. So that's why you need the certificate, because the certificate will give you the specific date. So all you can do is make a guess that at some time, possibly in April, May or June, he was born. It may be in March though, and the people didn't get round to registering the birth until April. So it's 3 months, but it could really be maybe even 4 or 5 months, depending on how efficient your relatives might have been with registering a birth before it was actually was registered. So they're not very specific in terms of giving you any kind of indication of when a child was born, but that's what the certificate will do. But you do have to pay for those. So that, for example, that's the 1837. So I'm going to back out of that and I want to go into the second half. And we're just going to have a little bit of a comparison. I haven't clicked on the image because it's very boring of the original document. It doesn't tell you anything. It's just typed up a list of names. So it's not really worth having a look. You can have a look if you like, but it's not that interesting. And again, you've got very basic information here, but what you would need would be this bit here if you wanted the certificate. So we'll have a look at the marriage certificates too. So again, I'm just going to back out of this, and here's a link to the first half of the marriage index. So again, I'm going to try John Smith. I want a bit of a go slow. What you will see when it loads is the first half of the marriage index. You'll get the record, and when you click on that and open it up, what you'll find is a list of other people that were married on that particular day. And so what happens is that it kind of pulls together that information, and so it gives you a list of potential spouses for the person you're looking for. So again, I'm just going to click on one at random, and it gives me the year, the quarter in which the marriage was registered, and then you can see here's a list of names. So we've got a John, so he's either married an Amy Maud Ambridge, Florence Ellen Kinder, or I think you can see where there's some duplication there, Florence Ellen Rinder. So I think that's a typographical error. So you've just got an Amy Maud Ambridge or a Florence Ellen Kinder as the potential spouses for John Nelson Smith. So you might think, oh, that's true. I know that it was great Uncle John, and he was married to an Amy, and so that might clue you into that's the right person. However, if you go to the modern part of the index, so here we go, here's the link to the 1916 to 2005 part, and we type in again John Smith. What you'll find with this is you've got the record, and then you've got a specific spouse who's named. So they're the main sort of differences with the marriage certificate, sorry, the marriage records. And then we can have a quick look at the death records too. So again, we'll just back out of that. And that's to the first half of the civil registration, 1837. So here we go again. Oh, so there you go. You've got, again, very sort of basic information about the death. And then if you just compare that to a modern death index, you can see this one includes the birth date of the individual who's died as well. So there's some differences between the two halves of the index. It's not just randomly split. There is slightly more information on the more modern indexes compared to the ones that date up until 1915. So it's just something to be aware of. So, as I said, before the civil registration began in 1837, you'd be looking at parish records, and the Derbyshire parish records are on here. So the easiest way, I think, to get into these is to go to your search button and go to the card catalogue. And then under the keyword, not the title, the keyword section, just type in Derbyshire and parish and click search. And here we go, it's this one here, it's the Derbyshire, England, Church of England, baptisms, marriages and burials, 1538 to 1812. So if you just click on that, and again, we'll just try putting a name in. So here we go, John Smith. And again, it's fairly basic information, but you've got his name, the burial, the date that he was buried. Obviously, bearing in mind that's the date he was buried, not the date he died, unless they were very efficient that day. But it's the ceremonies that are recorded here rather than the actual events themselves. So if you click on this here, you get a look at the original document, and again you can see, blimey, the handwriting that you're up against here. That's quite it's quite neat, but it's also, you can see kind of unless this is a very poor scan, you're looking at some sort of quite weather beaten and sort of time worn, careworn pages, and lots of splodges of ink and so on and so forth. But you can see that there. So these are like I say, this is the Church of England, so the non-conformist registers won't necessarily be on here. And it's the baptisms, marriages and burials as opposed to births, marriages and deaths. But this is the information you'd be looking at for Derbyshire relatives, potentially, that would predate the civil registration index. Just worth pointing out different ways to search on Ancestry as well. If you wanted to search geographically, if you want to know what records do they have for Ireland, for example, if you go up to this search button, if you just click on search itself, what it does is it brings up this explore by location map. And so you can use this to navigate round, for example, Europe. And let's have a look at what the records they have for Ireland. And it gives you a nice list here of the information that they have for different areas of the country. And even, well, the areas they have globally. But once you go into Ireland, if we zoom in, it does then break it down further into different areas of the country. So you could think, for example, I have my husband is from Ireland, from Cork, so I could see what records there are for Cork, for example, if we were researching his family history. You can also have a look and see what records there are for Derbyshire. So again, you would go to Europe and England, and then zoom in on England, and you can click around different counties. There's Derbyshire. So it brings up the records that are on there that are specific to Derbyshire. So that's a really useful way to just think, what do they have for this particular part of the country or part of the world? Okay, we're going to look also have a quick look at the military records as well. So again, you'd be searching globally, but what you can do on this page is brought up some featured data collections, but you can see the US bias. It does have the World War One service records. These are absolutely fascinating. Sadly, a large number of these were destroyed in bombing during the Second World War. So if you do manage to find your relative, you're doing very well, because a lot of them are gone, unfortunately. But these are a wonderful resource, really illuminating and just great to look at, just fantastic source of information, and just, I don't know, they're just something that I really enjoy viewing. So again, I've just picked the name John Smith, and it gives you so much information about his residence, his age, gives you all his Christian names, gives you his address. The British World War Victory Medal there. He was awarded. Even it's quite difficult to read the writing on this one, but even things like his height, weight, chest measurements. I'm trying to see what that says about his physical slight defects. That's a bit difficult to read. Something unfit, something. I'm not quite sure what that says, but you can see here how ragged that edge is, and that's because a lot of these records, like I said, were fire damaged. So they are sometimes known as the burnt records, because a large number of them are sort of crispy around the edges and fire damaged and bits missing. But yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot of information you have about sort of even, I suppose, quite personal things really about people's health. But it's a fantastic thing that they're on here. But like I say, sadly, a lot of them were destroyed. So there can be a slightly unusual case where if you have a relative who fought in the First World War, and they came home and sort of went about their life, went back to normal, their service records, if they've been destroyed, it can be quite difficult to find any real sort of acknowledgement that they even fought during the First World War. But we have these records are on there. Oh, slight error message there. Let me just come back out of this. But there's also soldiers died in the Great War lists, various medal rolls, prisoner of war records. So there's quite a lot of information on there. I just always highlight the World War One service records because they are so fantastic. But like I say, there is that caveat that a lot of them are missing. To look at other military records then, so again, once you're into this military records bit from the option from the search bar, you can then scroll down, and obviously you've got the UK service records there, but if you view all in card catalogue, this is where once you view things in the card catalogue, you're viewing everything essentially that's to do with the military in this case. So what you need to be focusing on is these menus along the left, because these will really help you refine down the records. So you can choose the option of just Europe records, and then within that you can then narrow it down further to the United Kingdom. You could also narrow it down by year. So if we were looking at the First World War, you could go for the 1910s. And then you can narrow it down by the type of record that you're looking for. Or you can just obviously have a quick scan through here and see the sort of things that are available. So it's really useful to be able to do that. And it's very important, filtering and refining records, but also taking in and out filters as well is really important with Ancestry. So you can take these options out. So you just click on them and you remove that option. So therefore that doesn't narrow it down to the 1910s anymore. So being able to navigate your way through, filter and refine out information is very important with Ancestry. It's something that I would definitely encourage everybody to kind of get to grips with and feel comfortable with, because then you just cut down the search time and you find resources that sort of make sense to you. But yeah, there's a lot of there on about military records. So finally, the other things that I will alert you to, the new collections button is really useful. If you use Ancestry a lot, and you want to keep up with what's been new and what's been added, then this is really handy, because they just list what's been added on there. So you might come across something, then you think, oh, actually I didn't know that was on there, or that's a new addition. And again, you can narrow that down. So you might look at that and think, well, I'm not interested in New York and Sweden, but I can narrow it down to Europe, and I can narrow it down to the UK again. And just see what they've put on for the parts of the world that I'm interested in. So you narrow it down to England, and then you can even narrow it down by county. So you can have a look and see what's the latest things that went on there for Derbyshire. So these are the dates that things were updated, and it often says new or updated. If it's been done relatively recently, it'll say that as well in green on the right, just to kind of let you know, like you can see here, new updated, for example, there. So you know what you're dealing with. So that's really useful. And then also the Learning Centre has some information that can be useful to you and can help you with any sort of specialist areas that you're interested in. And then the final thing is also charts and forms, because I think the most important thing is to write down and make sense of the information you find. It can be very unwieldy, local studies, family research, because you find something and then it's how do I make sense of this, and how do I keep track of this and not get confused, and am I doing my father's side of the family or my mother's side of the family? And people get to a certain point and they hit a brick wall and they switch and they do a different arm of the family, different branch, and before you know it, they've got reams and reams of paper, and it's very difficult to put that into any sort of logical format. And obviously a lot of people do family research as something for the whole family to have and to enjoy and to add to as it go, to pass on to others. So having a clear system in place and knowing what you do know and what you don't know and what your gaps are, I think is very important, because otherwise it can turn into a bundle of printouts that doesn't really mean anything if you're not very careful. So by all means, take advantage of these charts, and these can be printed out and filled in. So that's all for today. I hope that's been of interest to you and useful. And I would encourage you to just come into any Derbyshire library and have a go. You can't break the computer, you can't break Ancestry. If you have a bit of a play and you don't find what you're looking for, you can always come off it and try again another day. You do have to be a bit patient and persistent with local studies and family research. It isn't always as easy as just typing in a name and there's your family history, but it can be very rewarding and exciting when you find some information that you do want. And like I say, there's so much information on there. There's bound to be something that sheds some light on your family history. So thank you very much.